introduce Ashley Nermala and Rachel Collishaw. They will be presenting on Voting Rights Through Time, Real Stories, Real Histories. Ashley Nermala is the Civic Education Coordinator for Northwestern Ontario. She is a member of Red Rock Indian Band and has worked with local First Nation, Métis, and Inuit communities, organizations, students, and families in Indigenous education program projects. We welcome you. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel. Good morning, everybody, and to those of you online. I just want to quickly say how happy I am to be here in person, also while supporting those who are not able to be with us in person. And we're going to do our very best to make sure that you feel as included as possible during this session. So we're going to go through, we're going to do introductions. Wait. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, so you know who she is, and then we'll get through the agenda laid out.
Great, thanks, Ashley. I'm Rachel Collishaw. I came here from Ottawa. I work at Elections Canada as the pedagogical advisor. This is after 20 years career as a social science teacher in the Ottawa area.
Wonderful. Thank you. I didn't travel that far. I came from Nipawin. Roads were awful. Took forever, but I made it. Okay, we're going to go through the agenda. We're going to do introductions. We're going to have an overview of the program. We're going to do the exploration of voting rights through time, discussions and questions, and we can view, download, and order potentially. And we also have something very special called ACOE that we'd like to talk to you all about. For advocacy and education.
Okay, great. So we're going to do a little, oh, this is you, Ashley.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it is you.
So fun fact, I just started with Elections Canada in November. So this is my first time being at a conference in person presenting this workshop. However, I do it in the classrooms consistently and online through Connected North sessions way up north in Nunavut and other locations. So you will see both Rachel and I take turns presenting because I'm really also learning from her as well today. So just to turn and talk, what do you need to teach elections and democracy? So talk amongst yourselves. I know big groups, we're going to have to manage it, but just talk about what you need to teach elections and democracy in your classrooms.
So you need elders to help you. You need students to teach. What might you need in terms of like classroom resources? Like what might be helpful? Canada at the polls? Oh, yes, I know it well. Yeah, so that was our previous version of what we now call Election Simulation Toolkit. Okay. So we've been providing free resources to teachers since the 1990s. And in 2017, I'm just going to move this along because we've just got right to the next slide here. The clicker, yeah. So all of our resources were renewed. We started the renewal process around 2016, 2017, and we launched in 2018, and we've been updating them since then. But as part of the renewal process, what we did was we gathered teachers and engaged teachers across Canada and asked them that question, like, what do you really need? Like, what kind of resource would be really great to help you engage students in elections and democracy? And this is our sort of short list of what emerged from what teachers really want. So we know that inquiry-based lessons are huge, are very important in most people's curricula, that they want things that can be used in many different subject areas, that are collaborative for the students. They trust Elections Canada to be nonpartisan, of course, and also bilingual since we're a federal agency. And then accessible, so accessible to lots of different students so that everybody feels, that they're part of our democracy. And of course, for free. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is all of our lessons. So one of the things that we did to start this process was we created an advisory circle of educators that helped us at every step of the way. So we would develop a draft version of the activity, and then we would bring it to the advisory circle, and they would share sort of their feedback, and they would pilot it in their classrooms everywhere, and then we would, review, revise, and make it better. So everything has really been classroom tested, and everything has this very across Canada kind of feel to it. And so currently we are looking for folks right now to join our advisory circle of educators. So that's sort of meeting once a year in person and online once a year as well, to kind of give us feedback as we move into the next steps of our renewal of the resources. I think it's still me. Okay, I'm going all the way up there. Okay, so right, that was the thing I wasn't supposed to do. So each lesson, as a result of this rigorous process, each lesson includes a sort of a big idea, an inquiry question, a 3-part lesson structure, and hands-on materials. So you can see one of them in this workshop. In this photo is it's called Civic Action Then and Now, where students are working with a mat and cards, and we're going to be working through something like that. They also include videos, maps, data, infographics, case studies. So everything that you need to run the lesson is kind of included in the box, as it were. So when we talk about inquiry learning, we're talking about all these different things that, really are engaging students in doing the thinking and the learning in the classroom. And my favorite way that this has been shared with me or expressed is a former principal called it BIA, or bums in the air. So she would see, she'd be walking around, hi, come on in, walking around the classroom, and she would see if kids were leaning over the tables and talking to each other and their bums were in the air. That's what she called success for inquiry learning, was BIA. So, so, we can say it in all these fancy words, but that's really what we're looking for, is that student engagement where they feel part of the activity, they feel like their voice matters, and ultimately then their voice matters in our democracy as well. So for those of you online and those of you that teach in online situations, we also, during the pandemic, starting in 2020, we created blended learning tools. So I'll be showing you a little bit how those work as well. So we have these physical kits that you see before you, but we also have some online tools that you can access and use. So they use Google Apps to blend in-person and online learning. So you can use them fully online or parts of them in your real world classroom, and really trying to maintain that level of inquiry, engagement, and conversation even through an online space. So I'll show you how that looks for this resource as we get a little further down the road. And I'm going to turn it back over to Ashley to get us going on the activity. And I'm going to keep it going.
Okay. Okay. So in front of you, you have 2 sticky notes. And so on one sticky note of your, one color, same table, I would like you to write, sorry, brand new. I'm new here. How inclusive is our democracy? So just spend a couple of minutes thinking about, is it inclusive to you? Do you think it's inclusive? Could it be more inclusive? How could it be improved? Just kind of ponder that for a few minutes. However you want. This is just a conversation. The sticky notes are very next slide. Yeah. So this question for your classrooms is to guide the next, set the tone for this resource. So the compelling question will guide the learning throughout the activity as we move forward. So then we get to the sticky notes, and with your students, you would have them on one color, right? Think of a time when you felt excluded from something. Now, you don't typically want a story because the students love to tell stories. They will give you exactly how they felt excluded. We just want like how it felt. Like, were you sad? Were you, lonely? Things like that, right? Like the one word thing. So once you have that, I'll get everybody to write about thinking about a time when you felt excluded from something. How did that make you feel? Put your feeling on the paper, and then we're going to stick excluded up on this wall here between these two windows. Yeah. So every resource that we have at Elections Canada has a minds-on activity to connect the students' own experiences to the ideas that they'll be exploring. This invites curiosity, it makes the learning meaningful, and increases engagement as well as the success of the inquiry. Students should just say what they felt or did, not explain the incident. Anonymity is important here, whether it's in person, online, or using a Google form. Okay, and then once you finish that, write down the same thing for included. Think of a time when you felt included in something, and how did that make you feel? Rachel, do you want to talk about the pedagogy co-construct conceptual criteria? We'll do that once we list. Okay. Yeah, included on the well, my right, your guys' is left. And excluded, just put your sticky up on the wall there. That was just to get you in the mood. Okay. Okay. Right? I like it. Okay, Rachel, what do we got over there for excluded? So for those of you online, we had angry, isolated, frustrated, hopeless, and curious. And for included, happy, connected, a voice, opportunity, and proud. Okay, and another happy. Okay, and then I think you take it over again. Okay, great. I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. So, so if we're thinking through the pedagogy of this, this is what, we're it's a big word, co-constructing conceptual criteria. We're just spending some time with those words inclusion and exclusion and building together our understanding of what those mean. So by having students engage either with sticky notes or in the online tool, it is an anonymous Google form. You can have them really understand deeply what that means. And when we get into doing the activity, they can refer back to this sort of grounding that they've had. And just a fun fact in this photo, that fellow there with the suit, obviously is not a high school student. He is the Chief Electoral Officer of Canada, Stéphane Perrault. So he's our big boss, the guy in charge. He's like the minister, except he's not a minister. He's appointed for 10 years. So he's a big supporter of the civic education programming and is really keen to see to have youth more engaged in our democracy everywhere. So, right. Okay. So, we've got a few more people here in person, which is great. So for the case study, each group is going to need the timeline activity board, which you can see in front of you on the table, a set of case study cards, which are, oh wait, there must be a pointer, is there? Yes. So exciting. These ones here, I don't usually get this fancy technology. And then the context card, which is kind of where you start. So the context card is really to just give a little bit of background information about the group that you're looking at. And so that's in front of you. So I'm going to ask if the person at the back can choose a table to join, because we took away your cards. So this group here at the front has the First Nations people's case study, and the group at the back has the Inuit case study. And then there's 3 other case studies, which I'll just show you here. So we have women, I'm going to just use this pointer, it's so exciting. Women, Japanese Canadians, youth, and First Nations peoples and Inuit. So we're looking at all these different groups in the classroom. The idea is that, you know, each group in your classroom could have a different case study, and that they're kind of looking at how each of these groups was included and excluded over time. So the idea is that you read aloud the context card together before you begin. And then once you've read that, then you're going to go through the cards one at a time and kind of read them aloud to each other, and then place them to have a discussion about where they go on the timeline. So obviously we put a date on each card. So putting the cards by date shouldn't be too tricky. Yeah. So and so that's also part of this, like, understanding of the past. Like, if events happen all close together, like maybe there was something going on there. So sometimes the cards will pile up and they don't really fit neatly on the timeline, because like history is not like that. So sometimes they pile up, and you just let them pile up, but have the discussion about where you think they fit on the inclusion to exclusion scale, which you can see is like sort of +2 to -2, and you can put things in 0 as well if you want. So I'm going to let you get started. I'm going to give some instructions to the person online. Oh, 2 now, very exciting. They can discuss with each other. So if you're online, if you can go to our website, which is electionsanddemocracy.ca. So you can get there from the Elections Canada website if you go to the Teachers Corner, or you can just go to electionsanddemocracy, all one word.ca, and then look for resources, voting rights through time, and you can click on the blended learning resource and have a little explore around there, and you'll be able to see all the materials to some degree that everybody's working with in class. Okay. All right, so the groups in person they're not quite finished, but we'll bring it back to a discussion. You kind of get the idea of the activity. So I just have some pictures here of students. These are students in Toronto doing this activity with, again, our good friend Stéphane Perrault in the middle of it. I do like to show this photo because one of the things that you can do is you can write those words that we read out from your sticky notes, like nice and big in the classroom, so that students have sort of a way to think about it. And this group helpfully pointed out that some of these cards should be on 2 cards. And of course, we did that on purpose to really generate more student discussion because there isn't really a right answer for these questions, as for these cards, or right place to put them. That's what inquiry really is all about, is the students really thinking through, like, where do I put this? What does this mean to me? And so by having this like list of, the words of inclusion and exclusion and how that feels, if students, for example, like don't have an experience of being a First Nations person or of being a Japanese Canadian or a woman or whatever the group is that they're looking at, they can be in that empathy space because some of them seem like they might be inclusion, but they really don't feel like inclusion. And so this group I explained about the turning point. So this is really more like for a sort of an extension activity that's for history classes in particular, where you might be looking at historical thinking concept of continuity and change. And this idea that historians might look back and say, well, what, was there a turning point in your case study? And I think if I heard right from the group at the back, that was looking at the Inuit case study, you were saying like there isn't a turning point yet, like they haven't got back to their original kind of ways of governing themselves, which is an interesting take for sure. But there's lots of good answers for this, like where you might place that frame on your case study. So I think I've also put on the tables the thinking guide, which has these questions on it. So one of the things that teachers want to know is like, well, what happens if one group finishes before another group? And like, how do I manage that in the classroom? So the turning point frame is one way. We also created a little worksheet that, students can write down some of their thinking or answers before entering into the discussion in a moment. So these are really open-ended questions that are really trying to get at students building their knowledge. And I'm not going to ask you to do this. I'm actually going to ask you to stand up and walk around the room and have a look at the other case studies. So I know this group didn't quite finish, but you can read through the cards yourself if you want to. Ashley and I set up the youth case study here, the women in the middle, and Japanese Canadians at the back. And you can kind of take a look at the timelines. And the question I ask students to think about as they're looking at the different timelines is like, what's the shape of the timeline? And how is the shape of that timeline similar or different to the case study that we looked at or to the other ones? Like, are they all the same? And what does that sort of path of history look like? So I'll give you a few minutes to kind of take a wander and maybe talk to each other or have a quick discussion. Obviously, online, you can keep on looking at the resources. Yeah. Okay, so to come back for those that are following along online, we do have our online adaptation of this activity. So, so for each case study, there is first a Google form. So it works just like the sort of the main activity. On the first page is the context card text to kind of give students a little bit of the background, and then they go through each historical event and give it a ranking of +2 to -2 in that Google form. And then the second part, this is a Google Draw. So it's meant to, so you make your own copy of it, you share that with the students, and then they can move the cards around just like on the real in-person timeline. And so you can also click on the image to read it a little bit bigger, so you can read whatever was on there. So when we decided to go to create these online versions, we made them with our language learner version. So there was a little bit of a conversation in the room here about language learner versions. So what we've been working with in the room is our standard version, which is designed for high school students. It's written at about a grade 8 reading level, but we do have a language learner version also of every case study, which is written sort of more out of a grade 4 or 5 reading level, like in terms of much simplified content, a little bit more bullet points. We've removed some of the cards to take away some of the complexity, just so that students can get a sense of the historical events. And when we created the online versions, we created them in the language learner because we know that learning online is more challenging to read text just in an online environment anyway. And because we created them during all of the school and during the pandemic, there's a lot of other stressors happening too. So we have the share your thinking questions back here. What was the most difficult card to place? What events were surprising to you? Which events do you have questions about? So I would normally ask students to kind of talk with each other about this. We had the opportunity to kind of chit chat in the room. So I'm wondering if there's any questions that you have for either of us about the histories or about anything that we did with this resource. And online, if you have questions, feel free to open your mic or to write something in the chat, and we'll be able to take your questions as well. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. So the comment, I guess, for those online was just that there's lots of ways to expand this. For example, researching particular historical figures, like what are they doing now? What have they done since? Or looking at other barriers to voting, like weather or hunting times or that kind of thing. Like this really is just looking at the historical legal right to vote. But we did intend for it to be that kind of springboard to get kids excited about this topic and to think about their own responsibilities and rights in voting in Canada. Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's another great exploration. Yeah, lots of different ways you can take it. So these consolidation questions, you can reflect and discuss. So does getting the right to vote always mean inclusion in democracy? Which, if they've been reading the cards, the answer should be no for this one. And they should be able to see that, the right to vote comes at one time, but then there's stuff that happens after and is continuing to happen. That shows that there's lots of other ways of being included in democracy. It's not just about having the right to vote; it's about having access to the vote and having that across Canada. And then are other changes needed to make democracy more inclusive? So hopefully students might have some ideas about that. So in a typical high school class, that I find teachers will often steer the conversation around, should we lower the voting age to 16? Would that be a change? What are some other changes based on the experiences of these groups that we've read about? The other thing that we did is in the teacher's guide, there's a whole pile of background information. Okay, not a whole pile, I don't want it to sound intimidating. There's like about 3 or 4 pages for each case study that gives a little bit more information, more detail, more nuance. So if students are having those questions and they want to do more exploration, you've got a kind of a place to start. And then there's sort of the legal history of voting rights, as well as just some general facts. So like, what I told this group earlier, why we developed the First Nations in the Inuit case study, but not Métis, because Métis were never formally denied the legal right to vote in federal elections. It doesn't mean they don't face other barriers. It's just not enough really for a case study. We often have questions about Black Canadians who are also never formally denied the right to vote in Canada. But as you can see from the case studies that we did choose, there were specific reasons why certain groups were excluded over time. Okay, I have a guessing game for you. How many Canadians do you think had the right to vote in 1867? So as a percentage, like what do you think, what percentage of Canadians do you think had the right to vote? It includes Indigenous peoples. 20, 25%? Do I have any? 15? Do I have any other takers? Any higher or lower? Okay. So there's a short little video that animates this infographic, but we're not going to watch that one today. But this is the infographic. You were actually closer. It was 11%. So if we think about the population of Canada in 1867 was 3 million people, more or less. It did not include the Inuit at that time, since most Inuit lands didn't come into Canada, what we call Canada now, until 1880. But yeah, it was only men who were 21 and owned property. Yeah. So anyone under 21, women, and most First Nations people. So 11% only had the right to vote. So again, like really pulls into question, was this really a democracy? And oh, I forgot to make you guess. What about now? How many people do you think have the right to vote today in Canada as a percentage of the population? 70? Okay. No, like have the legal right to vote, not access to voting. That's a whole other kettle of fish. 100%? I heard 70%. Okay, 72. So, of course, all Canadian citizens aged 18 years and over have the right to vote, but those under 18, of course, do not have the right to vote. So those are in that 38%. No, 28%. Yeah, so anyone under 18, residents who are not Canadian citizens, which is a fairly large number of folks in Canada. And of course, my friend Stéphane Perrault, the Chief Electoral Officer of Canada, he's the only person in Canada who is designated by law as not able to vote, aside from those the only citizen who is 18 or over. And that's for reasons of impartiality. And of course, our population has, become much bigger. So this is based on last 2021 data. So our population is about 38 million, sorry. Yeah, so then we end the lesson with an exit card or some reflection questions, which you'll see on the sheet in front of you. So what was surprising to you, what's a question that you have, and what other changes are needed. So this is a really great way because in an inquiry lesson, we want kids to be talking, to be interacting, to be busy with their bums in the air. We need them to kind of calm down a little bit and like write down their learning to consolidate it so that they will remember it later and think about that. And then, of course, it can give you, the teacher, lots of about what they took from the lesson and if they have any other misconceptions or misunderstandings about the content. Yeah. Do you want to take up the end?
No, I think you were going to take it right till the end. I was just learning. So do you all have any takeaways? Do you have any feedback for the resources? Do you want to order the resources? They're all free. There's various ones. The ACOE is the Advisory Circle of Educators, and so we are looking for various representatives from all over Canada to be part of this advisory council for things like this, so that we're creating more resources, and we're just continuing, and we need educators to tell us what we're doing wrong, what you need, how easy it needs to be, or things like that. So there is a website you can apply on, I think.
So if you go to our website,
It's on all of our resources.
then there's a place to do
Yeah, so here's some of the other resources, and we have samples to look at our booth. So we've got digital skills and democracy, does voting matter, civic action then and now, which election, which is about to go under a revamp. We are hoping to include banned elections in there. Elections by the numbers, geography of elections, mapping electoral districts, and the election simulation toolkit. So we have all of these up at the front that you guys can take a look at. We have printed order forms, or you can order online. They get to you in about a week, completely free. We also have handouts you can take back to your students. So if you really would like to dive into the elections, you can talk to them about registering to vote. There's also information up there about working at an election. And students tend to be very, very interested in what that means either way.
Yeah, maybe just talk about your role. These ones are not.
This one?
No.
No.
Go a few more. Go a few more. Three more. One more. Just, yeah, and just talk about
Okay. So I was hired to take these resources and go out into community, to schools, do it online. Oh yeah, sorry. No, I'll drop it. So I was hired specifically in November to take these resources and come into community, go into First Nation schools, work with teachers and provide PD to teach them how to use it and so on, so that we're reaching First Nation electors, First Nation students, and as a First Nations person working in education and mainstream, I was all too happy to take this position and try and fan out. So I get to do all of Northwestern Ontario, and so I'm very new, and I've done a few schools in and around Thunder Bay, Nipigon area, like the Greenstone area, and I've done some online sessions further north. But you can go on to electionsanddemocracy.ca and you find classroom resources, and then, or no, it's what is it?
It's under professional learning.
Professional learning, and then you click on Northwestern Ontario, and I come up and you can just simply click a link and book me. It's super simple. We can either do online or in person. Yeah, and Connected North, through Connected North. So that's a little bit about my role, and so I rather enjoy it. I'm super excited about it. My kids are over it because I've been practicing with them. But I think it's good. I also brought my business card, so you guys have my contact information if you have any questions, or if you change your mind, or if you know somebody in your schools or communities who are like, oh yeah, that's right up my alley, but maybe it's not up your alley, then you can share the contact info with them as well. Rachel.
Okay.
It's Rachel's turn. Your computer went off.
Yeah, that's fine. So just all of the resources are free to order, and we'll ship everything direct to you. Elections Canada is pretty good at shipping stuff. That's kind of one of the things that we do. So we'll make sure you get whatever kits you order. Obviously, everything is available. Many things, this one included, is available in language learner versions as well for your students. And they don't look different from the regular version, so that you can use them in a mixed classroom if you need to or want to. And then, what was the other thing? Yeah, everything is also available online to download. So if you only want your students to look at one of these case studies because you want to be able to talk about it, and you want to have your 5 groups or your 4 groups or whatever working on one case study, you can download and print out all of the case studies just from the website and just like make 5 of them if you want. Or you could get your colleague down the hall to order one as well. So you can have like 5 in your school and mix and match, like whatever you want. So there's lots of things. Come and see us at the table. We'll give you lots more information. And if you have any other questions for us, we're happy to take them.
Yeah.
And we're really excited to be here and to support
Thanks for
your
joining
schools.
our session.
Thank you so much for coming.
It is noon. I believe that means it's lunchtime, and so we're here cleaning up if you guys want to stay and chit chat. But otherwise, thank you for coming, Miigwech.
I would just like to thank our presenters for
Thank you, Serenity.